Hello students, today we are going to start reading a story written by Mark Twain, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Mark Twain was an American writer. He was also known as Samuel Clemens. He is best remembered for his two novels, The Adventure of Tom Sawyer and The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Basically, these books dealt with humanity of African Americans and how the blacks were treated. In short, the story we are going to read is of Huck, who runs away from his abusive father and with his companion, the runaway slave Jim, makes long and frequently interrupted voyage down the Mississippi River. As a result of all these adventures, Huck learns to love and respect Jim in the end, who was ultimately just a slave. Let us read this story, Huck and his friends. If you have read Tom Sawyer, you know a lot about me. But if you haven't, it doesn't matter, because now I am going to tell you about myself. My mother died soon after I was born, and my father, a drunkard, treated me badly. He beat me so often that I ran away from him and lived like a wild boy in the woods. The naughtiest boys of the town were my friends, and the chief of them was Tom Sawyer. Tom Sawyer and I had many exciting adventures together and a great deal of fun. However, those happy times came to an end when Widow Douglas, in the kindness of her heart, took me into her house, intending to bring me up as her son. Widow Douglas was very kind to me, but I was unhappy in her house. I felt that I was in a prison. I had to wash every day, to put on clean clothes, and I even had to wear shoes. I couldn't eat when I liked, but only at fixed meal times. When Widow Douglas rang a bell, I had to sit down at a table using a knife and a fork to eat. I had to go to bed early and stay in a bed all through the night. This was hard for me because I was used to sleeping in the woods or wandering about the streets at night time. What happens is Huck is telling this story about himself and his adventures. He is talking in first person over here. He tells us that his mother had died when he was just born, and his father was a drunkard who treated him very badly and used to beat him very often. So he ran away in the woods, where he met friends who were equally naughty and adventurous like him, and the chief was Tom Sawyer. But his happy times came to end when Widow Douglas, a kind woman, she took him into her house, intending to bring him up as her son. But what happened is that he was not happy over there. Huck was not happy because he was made to do everything from time to time. He would be told to be disciplined and do everything in manners. So he used to not like that kind of life. Widow Douglas's sister, Miss Watson, an old maid with glasses, came to live with her. And I didn't like her at all. She made me learn spellings for hours. I found this very dull and I just couldn't sit still. Don't put your feet up, Huckleberry, she would say. Sit up straight, boy. Don't yawn like that. Do try and behave. I bore this as long as I could, and then I ran away to the woods, where I felt free. So again, after some time, Widow Douglas's sister, Miss Watson, comes to stay, and she also tries to discipline him. But he did not like all that, and he runs away to the woods again. It was Tom Sawyer who persuaded me to go back to Widow Douglas's again. He found out where I was hiding and came to me and said, Huck, I'm going to start a band of robbers. I'm letting Joe Harper join and Ben Rogers as well. You can join too, Huck, if you go back to Widow Douglas's. Think it over, Huck. I thought it over and in the end went back to the widow's house and even to school. So Tom Sawyer convinces Huck to go back to Widow Douglas's house because they were planning to make a band of robbers with Joe Harper, Ben Rogers, and the two of them. The signal for the first meeting of the band came late one night. I was sitting up by my bedroom window, feeling lonely and miserable. In the distance, an owl was crying about somebody who was dead. In the yard, a dog was howling about somebody who was going to die. The clock in the town struck 12, and then all was still. Suddenly, I heard the sound of a branch breaking in the dark among the trees. Somebody was moving down there. Soon I heard a faint meow meow. How glad I felt. Tom Sawyer had come for me. So, what there happened is, one night when he was sitting at the window of Widow Douglas's house, he hears a sound and he feels happy that Tom Sawyer had come to meet him finally. Meow meow, I answered as softly as I could. Quickly I put out the light, climbed out of the window of the shed and onto the shed and slipped down to the ground where Tom was waiting for me. We hurried to the banks of the river where Joe Harper, Ben Rogers, and the 3 other boys were waiting. Then we all climbed into a boat and rowed to a cave. It was damp and cold in the cave, but we lit our candles and sat down in high spirits. So the gang, all of them, Joe Harper, Ben Rogers, Huckleberry, Tom Sawyer, and there were the 3 other boys, they all went and sat in a cave. Now, we'll start this band of robbers, Tom Sawyer began. Everybody that wants to join has got to swear to keep the rules and write his name in blood. Afterwards, he's got to kill anybody who hurts any member of the band. Hurrah, we all cried. That will be fun. Ben Rogers, who had a practical mind, said, I'd like to know exactly what our gang's going to do. What's our line of business? We put masks on and stop carriages on the road. Tom explained, we rob the people of their watches and their money. So they decided to make a gang and they decided to kill or rob anybody who is going out on the carriages. Sometimes we kill them, sometimes we bring them back to the cave and keep them here till they are ransomed. Ransomed? What's that? I don't know, but that's what they do in books. But how can we do it if we don't know what it is? Well, I don't know. Perhaps ransom means keeping the people till they're dead. That's silly. They'll eat up all the food and they'll keep on trying to get away. No, they won't. They will be guard, keep watching them all the time. He'll shoot them down if they move a finger. So they had also decided to kidnap people and ask a ransom from them or their family. A guard? That's clever. I don't think who's going to sit up all night watching them. Well, that's how it is done in the books. What about the women? Do we kill them right away? Ben Rogers, Tom exclaimed in disgust. If I was as silly as you are, I'd keep my mouth shut. Of course we don't kill the women. In the books, the robbers bring the women to the cave and treat them very politely. After a time, the women fall in love with the robbers and never want to leave them. So they had decided not to kill any of the women. It seems to me, Ben Rogers said, that the cave is going to be full of women and people waiting to be ransomed. There won't be any room left for us. However, go ahead. I don't mind. We elected Tom Sawyer the captain of the gang and the meeting was over. We all made our way back home. I climbed onto the shed and in through the window just as the day was breaking. My new clothes were dirty and with the candle grease and mud, and I felt tired out. The next morning, Miss Watson gave me a good scolding because of my dirty clothes. Widow Douglas said nothing at all but just cleaned off the grease and the mud. However, she looked so sad that I decided to begin to change my ways if I could. So, this gang now was ready to start with their adventures. This was first lesson. We'll start reading ahead later on. What I am going to do now is tell you all to read this lesson once again on their own and try to understand. There are many children, what they do is they read the whole book so they know the story also well. I would advise you all to do the same thing if you could. At least otherwise read the first lesson. If you get your hand on the other book, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, please read that because this is a sequel to that book. So it would make it much more interesting and understandable. I'm going to send you one scene comprehension with this video. So please do that also. Okay. Thank you very much, students.